Boom, action. All right, guys. So, okay, today we're going to talk about this topic right here that has to do with this particular diagram. Okay, who remembers what the word is for this that represents this diagram? Who remembers?
Central dogma.
Very good. Central dogma. Okay. Now, this right here is this is like the biggest concept, okay, when it comes to biology. One of the biggest concepts, because it's all about how life continues. Okay, this explains how life continues. Okay, so and if this doesn't happen, then life will not continue. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is this concept, this part right here. Okay, this part where it says DNA replication. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so to make this a little bit more interesting, I went ahead and have a video here that I'm going to use to help you understand why DNA replication is so essential. So write that down in your notes. Why DNA replication is so essential? Okay? So make sure you guys write that down in your notes. Why is DNA replication so essential? All right, so now, what do you guys think? Here we go. What do you think we're looking at right here? What do you think we're looking at? What is this? What do you guys think?
It kind of looks like an egg, but I think it's probably a cell.
Very good. This thing right here is a cell. All right? Okay, now what did we learn about a cell? What have we learned about cells so far? What have we learned?
That they make us up.
Yeah, that they make you guys up. You're built from cells. Very good, right? And so now, in order for a cell to function, what does it have inside of it?
Organelles.
Okay, it has organelles, right? So it has things inside of it, right? Okay, one organelle that's super important, okay, is called the nucleus. Now, what's in the nucleus? That's super important.
DNA.
Very good. It's DNA, exactly, right? So we got DNA, right? And so here's the DNA, right? And that's what we've been studying this last couple weeks, right? DNA, right? Now, in order for this cell, okay, what do cells do besides staying alive? What do they have to do so that they don't go extinct?
Reproduce.
Exactly, right? So this cell right here, okay, has to reproduce. Now, what do you mean? What do we mean by reproduce? What does that mean?
To repopulate, to make more and more.
Exactly. So this cell, okay, has to, like, in order, and what cells literally do, right? To continue to stay alive, they have to reproduce. Exactly, right? So also, in order for us to not go extinct, right? Like for humans, right? We have to reproduce, right? And so here's the dilemma that I want you guys to kind of like think about a little bit, okay? If this cell has to reproduce, okay, make more of itself, what does it have to do with the DNA before it makes more of itself? So this cell, in order to stay alive, it has to make more of itself, right? But when it makes more of itself, what has to happen to this DNA? What do you guys think? Because
half of the DNA goes to the offspring. Then
okay, well, okay, so let's say this is 100% of its DNA, right? So like if this cell now becomes two cells, right? All right, so let's go back. And now look. Boom. See that cut right there? Okay, now we have two cells. Okay, now we have two cells. Okay, so now this guy has a nucleus, this guy has a nucleus. Okay, and inside, now what you're saying is it only has half of the DNA that was originally there? Is that what you're saying? So now 50's over here, and now 50's over here. Is that what you're saying, Ethan?
Yes.
Okay, now, well, think about it like this. Okay, if you got a phone, would you only want, if you got a new phone, would you only want like only 50% of your old contacts in your new phone?
Yeah.
You do? You only like half the people on your phone list?
Oh, none.
Right? Right? So that's what I'm saying, right? So like, for example, let's say you got a new phone, right? So let's imagine this is one phone, and then this is another new phone, right? Do you think it's a good idea just only to have 50% of the original information in there? No, it's not, right? Because the DNA, remember what we said about DNA. DNA has codes, right? DNA has codes. So if we have 100% of all the codes, and now all of a sudden we become two cells, we don't want to give the next two cells only 50% of the information, because what if they need the other 50%? Does that make sense? So what needs to happen is that before this cell, okay, reproduces, it has to copy its entire DNA. Its entire DNA, so that the new cell has 100% of its DNA. Does that make sense? So, and so how does the cell do that? How does the cell do that? So let's go ahead and go ahead and use your gizmo, okay, to help you guys understand that, right? So let's do this. All right, so now, so let's imagine that, let me make some DNA, right? So just like you guys did, right? So here's the DNA, okay, right? So we got nucleotides, we're using the nucleotides to make some DNA, right? So imagine that I'm making the DNA for that cell that we had in the video, right? So here it is. So I'm making it, making it, making it, making it, right? Obviously this happened, like, making it is the hardest part here. Okay, one more, boom, right? Okay, good, good. All right, there it is, right? So that's one strand, right? But DNA has how many strands, people?
Two.
Two, right? So what nucleotide do I need right here in front of the adenine?
Thymine.
Thymine, very good, right? Okay, and then what do I need?
Guanine.
I need guanine. You sure?
Thymine.
Thymine, good. Then what do I need?
Guanine.
Good. And then what do I need?
Guanine.
Guanine, good. And then what do I need?
Cytosine.
Cytosine, good. And then?
Cytosine.
Cytosine, and then?
Adenine.
Good.
Adenine.
Good, there it is, right? And so now let me add my phosphate groups to make sure everything's correct. I mean, everything's like locked in, right? And so let's imagine that this right here is the DNA of that cell. Okay, here it is, right? So let's imagine that this right here is the DNA of this cell right there. Okay? Does that make sense? So now what has to happen is, now these two cells, right? If I only have, if I only have one copy of it, okay, right? If I only have one copy of it, then only this one doesn't have any DNA. So I need more copies than just one, right? So in order for it, before this cell divides and becomes two, this cell right here, this original cell, okay, it has to copy, we have to copy the DNA, okay? Copying DNA is called DNA replication. Okay, so we got to copy this DNA before the cell can divide. And you guys are always making new cells, and before the cells split, okay, the DNA has to be copied. So how does that happen? Okay, step number 1, write it down. Okay, step number 1. So this is step 1 in DNA replication. All right, and tell me again what DNA replication is. What does DNA replication stand for? Don't worry, we're just in front of the whole world. Don't make me look bad. It's all right. What does DNA replication mean again?
Making more DNA.
Exactly. So step number 1, okay, is see this guy right here? That guy is a protein. Remember we've been talking about proteins? Okay, Elizabeth, what do we say proteins are? I told you think of them like what?
Like apps or workers of the cell.
There you go, like apps, right? So imagine this is an app, right? A protein. And it's called an enzyme because what proteins are called enzymes. They're basically like these very special molecules that allow chemical reactions to happen. All right. In other words, they take molecules and make new molecules out of it. So, anyways, this little guy right here, this protein, you need it for step 1. Okay. The very first step that needs to happen is, okay, this enzyme, it's called DNA helicase, it splits the DNA into 2 sides. Okay, so make sure you write that down. Step 1, DNA helicase, or the enzyme helicase opens up the DNA strand just like this. Okay, now step 2, all right, remember this is now step 2, whoops. This is step 2 now. So let's talk about step 2. In step 2, now we have a different protein, a different app, right? Inside the cell. And what this protein does, his name is DNA polymerase, okay? And this guy is gonna allow the cell to add more nucleotides. And so this is what this looks like, right? So when we release this guy, now what nucleotide do you think it's gonna put right here? In this, what nucleotide is gonna go right here?
Thymine.
Thymine, that's right. And then what's it gonna put right here?
Thymine.
Thymine, good. And it's gonna continue, and it's gonna do the same thing on this side, okay? So let me show you what that looks like, right? So it's gonna use thymine, it's gonna put thymine in there, see that? Boom, it's gonna use, there's another adenine, thymine, there it is. Then it's, what do I need here? Guanine, because cytosine and guanine match up, right? Guacamole and chips, okay, there it is, 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 boom, right? So now look, we have one DNA molecule complete. But look, we have another original strand, okay? And so here it comes, right? Look, if it wouldn't do cytosine. See how cytosine doesn't pair up? Thymine pairs up with adenine, okay, right? And so there it is, boom, 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 boom. And so what this protein does, okay, DNA polymerase, it adds the nucleotides, and now look what I have. Now I have 2 new DNA molecules. See that? This one right here is an old strand. This one over here is an old strand. It's one of the original strands, or instead of old, I can say original, right? So original, the OG. Right? And then this one's an OG right here. So this guy right here, this is an OG strand right there. And this is the other original strand. And what DNA polymerase did, it made these 2 new strands. And as a result, now we have 2 new DNA molecules. See that? And so now what we could do, now that the cell has double the DNA, right? Now that the cell has double the DNA, right? 1 and, right? Now that we have double the DNA, here we go. Okay, let's go back to the original cell. There we go. Right? Now we have double the DNA. Whoops. Come on, buddy. There it is. See that? Laggy. Okay. And so now we got 2 of the same DNA molecules. Two of the same. So now what's going to happen is these guys, okay, are going to literally now be, hold on, let me put it here. Where is it? Okay, here we go. All right, boom, screen. And now, this is what we got here. Oh my goodness. Hold on. Hold on. All right, here we go. What the heck? So 1, 1, and let's go down to the original cell. So many cells. Boom, boom. So now look. So now that we have 2 cells, okay, now the 2 cells have their DNA. Does that make sense? And so DNA replication is this process of making more DNA. And so now look, these 2 cells now became 4. How many molecules of DNA got made right here? Now how many molecules do they need? How many copies of the original DNA do they need now? Now that there's 4 cells? What do you guys think? Right? So like if we're, it's hard to see, but look. This is 1 cell, this is another, and this is another. So of that original DNA, how much DNA do you think they need?
Each one would probably need 75% because
No. Every time they need another full copy. A full copy. So that DNA that we talked about right here, this guy, where is it? Okay, this guy right here. See? The DNA, the cell has to make its DNA twice. Okay, so like if you guys could imagine, right? This is 1 cell, and now that it made 2 cells, now it could divide. And now this cell's gonna have its DNA, this cell's gonna have its DNA. And this happens over and over and over. And so that's what I'm trying to tell you guys in terms of that DNA right here. Okay, it needs to be copied over and over and over so that every cell has its own DNA. Does that make sense? Okay, and so anytime cells make new cells, the DNA right here had to get replicated, had to get copied. And so now if we let this video play out, look, see that? Before the cells split up, the DNA had to get copied, just like I showed you in your gizmo. So DNA is always being replicated over and over and over and over. Okay, in this case, what do you guys think is being formed? Did you guys catch it at the beginning of the video? It's a little salamander. And so look at all these are new little cells. And all these cells have to have the original DNA that we started with. So without DNA replication, you couldn't make multicellular organisms like us. Okay, now notice what's happening now. The cells are starting to organize and differentiate. That means like become different. So and they start forming the pieces of the salamander, okay, the body parts. How do the cells know what to do? Where's the information that's gonna guide this process?
In the DNA.
In the DNA, that's right. Like this thing is gonna turn into a salamander because it has the DNA of a salamander. If it had the DNA of a human, then these cells would turn into a baby human boy or a baby human girl. That's why every single cell needs DNA, because in the DNA, that's where the information is, okay, to keep this bad boy going, okay, and develop. See that? And so the fish, this little salamander is starting to take shape. And the DNA has all the codes to make all the proteins that are helping this process move along. Okay? And let's speed up the thing so you guys can see the final result here. Right? And so if you guys, I don't know if it's hard to imagine, but like literally one cell has become millions and millions of cells, and in that process, okay, you had to make millions and millions of copies of the original DNA. And that process of making more DNA is called DNA replication. You can't make more cells without it. That's why it's the first step of the central dogma. See that? See the little fish? Right? Made out of cells, and those cells have DNA. That DNA had to get replicated over and over and over so that every single cell has the instructions it needs to do the jobs that it requires so that the living thing can develop and stay alive. Right? Like some cells became the heart. In the DNA, it has codes that tell those cells, hey, form the heart tissue, and so forth and so forth. So without the cells having, without all the cells having their DNA, then this can't happen. Make sense? And eventually, when it's fully developed, okay, it'll break out and be part of the real world, right? So that's the amazing process. This all happened, okay, starting with one single cell, right? Okay, so you guys need to make sure that you guys understand this concept that in order for living things to reproduce, right? Okay, so I'll recap for you. Okay, so when you have a cell, right? The cell has DNA, and anytime the cell divides, before it does so, the DNA, okay, has to get replicated. And what does that mean? That means that you need to make 2 copies of the original so that one copy goes here and the other copy goes there. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes or no? A little bit? A little bit? All right. So hopefully this makes sense, right? So if we go back to our original slide, okay, here we go. DNA replication is super important. Why is why DNA replication is super important? Who can summarize that? Here's the answer. If there was no DNA replication, right, then this would be missing. Look, 4 cells, only 1 molecule of DNA. DNA replication allows the cells to copy its DNA so that every cell has the DNA that it needs to stay alive and sustain itself. All right, any questions, concerns on this, guys? Any questions, concerns?